if you've ever wanted to put an aquarium in your lounge room, why not make it the size of your lounge room? This aquarium is more than just the feature of the lounge room. It sort of is the lounge room. If you can dream it, why not?
So, how long ago did you build this tank?
Oh, geez, probably about 16 years ago when I came into the house. So, it's made from 19mm thick glass because there was a bit of concern with respect to the amount of water that it would actually need to keep. I think it's something around the 2,000 litres of water in the actual tank itself.
And St George made this tank?
Yeah, they had to actually build it on site at the time.
Yeah, well, this wouldn't fit through a door.
So it was built on site 16 years ago, and it's been going since. Always been set up for marines.
And then you were saying the sail-fin tang?
Yeah, so I did have a sail-fin tang in my previous tank. It was a 6-foot tank when I was living in my previous place. I brought the fish over at the time, and I had that sail-fin tank for the 16 years in this tank, plus the previous 9 or 7 odd years in the previous tank that I had as well. So the larger volume of water has really helped keep sort of like water chemistry reasonably stable. My focus has always been to try and have more of a fish sort of like tank, a bit of a mixed reef, but more focus has been on the actual fish as opposed to, you know, really having it set up with corals and stuff.
And how old are the guys that are in there now? Like, how old's that blue tang?
Oh look, the blue tang, fox face, powder blue, they would be probably coming up close to about 10 years now, 8 to 10 years. They would have had those guys. Hidden somewhere now because it's a little bit shy is a large bird-nosed wrasse. Bought him from you guys many years ago as a pair, and it was a female. Male ended up dying, and then the female turned into the male, which was quite an interesting thing to actually watch in the tank. But yeah, the large volume really sort of helps out. And come in the evening when the lights start to actually dim, all those fish will actually just disappear in all the crevices underneath the tank, and you don't actually see any fish in the tank at all. So there's plenty of hiding spots and stuff like that.
And how old's that pajama? Because look at this.
Oh, look, the pajama again. A lot of the actual fish would be coming up to at least 5 years, if not 10 years. I did also have a pajama cardinal in there, which was about 20 odd years, 26 years, which recently sort of like passed on. So I am actually getting a lot of, the fish which initially make the transition and, you know, go through quarantine and all that kind of stuff. They do tend to actually go well.
So how often do you clean the skimmer?
Oh, look, I must admit that my cleaning regime is not the best with all the other commitments around the place, but I try and do clean it up at least once a week to twice a week. It does get filled, but it's just one of those kind of things where I know what I should be doing, and it should be more regular small cleans, but I must admit I don't just get a chance to it, and literally rely on the fact that there's a large volume of water. So changes do occur slowly. Obviously, if it was a much smaller tank, you'd have to do it, much more regularly.
Did you clean it because you knew I was coming?
Yes, I did. It was full of crap beforehand.
So the size of the skimmer is one key in regards to the skimmer's efficiency, but probably what's more important than the actual size of the skimmer is how regularly the skin is cleaned. Because fatty acids build up inside this neck of the skimmer, which reduces its efficiency severely. So one thing you can do is either increase the size of the skimmer and try to clean it regularly, or there are now auto head cleaning skimmers, so they've got a little cleaning mechanism in them. So therefore you can get away with a much smaller skimmer if the skimmer is actually cleaned regularly. The other thing you can look at doing with a tank as big as this is look at doing what's called wet skimming. So wet skimming means that you have the skimmer outlet connected to a drain, and you have it so it skims relatively wetly. But if you are going to do that, it is very important that you watch the salinity, because you're going to be losing an amount of water, and you are going to need to monitor your salinity if you are going to be wet skimming. But wet skimming does allow you to get more results out of a small skimmer. So that's just a couple of considerations.
So I'll just give them a bit of a feed, and hopefully most of the guys will actually decide to come out.
And what portion of frozen versus dry food do you use?
Most of the times these days I use more frozen. I do throw some sushi or nori in there as well. But I do try, even in this frozen mix, I have actually thrown in there some dry food as well. And it's a combination of prawns and mussels and octopus and squid and
These are bird nose.
Yeah, the bird nose wrestler. He'll always come out for a feed, but he's always a little bit.
The tranny.
Yeah. So yeah, he's had a sex change. But yeah, he was only, or she was only a very, very small female when I picked her up from you guys years ago.
How long ago you reckon?
Oh, jeez, maybe 8 years ago. Maybe, you know, like, I don't know, yeah. Been around for a while. And a lot of the fish which I have actually picked up, they have been what I would actually call juveniles at the time. So they have actually grown up in the actual tank as opposed to just buying something that's fully grown. So the powder blue, when I first picked it up, I had it in quarantine, and it wasn't actually doing too well, and I thought I was going to actually lose it whilst in quarantine. So I actually did a freshwater bath on it, and thought I'll put it in the actual tank after the freshwater bath, and left it in there for about a minute or so. You know, obviously the temperature and the pH was, you know, as per the main tank. And then all these flat worm kind of parasites just fell straight off it. And the bottom of the actual container was just covered with this almost translucent parasite. And then when I saw, like, put it in the tank ever since, you know, the powder blues, you know, being great, because I know they can be a bit finicky when they come in the actual tanks. Wow. So there's a little bit of a story behind that one. Yeah, the fox face was absolutely tiny when I, you know, picked up that one as well. But again, yeah, it's just really, I think, the size of the actual tank, which allows them to actually.
And how often are you water changing it?
Oh, look, in terms of water changes, I do them about once every 2 weeks. I'll change anywhere between 100 and 200 litres of water.
And do you mix the salt, or do you?
No, I just go just due to the actual, you know, sheer volume of the actual tank, and the proximity of the actual local boat ramp. I'll go down late in the evening on a really high tide when there's no traffic, etc.
Yep.
And I'll you know, pick up something like about 1,000 litres of salt water at the time, and then I just use that to do the actual water changes.
So this tank is completely overrun with Aiptasia, but the question is what to do about it. Now, because it's such a big tank, we'd be very hard pressed to do it with any sorts of solutions. The only real thing that we could try is Stripies, and Stripies do an unbelievable job. Stripies completely cleaned up my shark tank. The only thing is that there is some risk of it going after the morphs, which would certainly be a shame, because the morphs in this tank are absolutely beautiful, and you're really not seeing the colour of the morphs in this video. They look very plain in the video, but in real life they're actually much prettier than.
Yeah, and they also fluoresce considerably with the actinic solid light at night time. Just to give you an indication, those morphs started off with less than, I think there was about 8 morphs, and they've just, you know, have multiplied. And some of the other ones there as well, they probably only started with maybe 5 or 6 of them like years ago. I haven't actually cut them. They've just naturally
Done it
increased
themselves.
and budded. So I know they typically go better in an older tank with lots of sort of like fish, which can produce a bit of nutrients. So, but yeah, they have actually, one of the things which they have actually done well in the actual tank.
So if you did get a striper, you'd have to be prepared to get it out, which would be much easier said than done. Yeah, you'd have to be prepared to do a overhaul, which on this tank would be goodbye weekend.
Oh yeah, there's been a couple of times when I had, in the early stage when I fixed it up and I had to do a bit of an overhaul, pull out rocks and re-clean things. It was literally a whole weekend. It's like a 2-day job to pull everything out and fix it all up and then fill it up with water again. It was a nightmare. And the thing is about this thing is, a tank of this size, absolutely great, but you certainly do need to be committed to it. It's not something that you can just say, oh, I think I might pack it away now because I'm a bit bored with it. It's almost impossible to pack it away.
Oh yeah, sure is. So peppermint shrimp are another option for aptasia, but with this big bird nose wrasse, peppermint shrimp would be at risk because this bird nose might certainly decide to eat. If this bird nose decides to go to the big aviary in the sky, you could consider peppermint shrimp. But with this guy in there, it would certainly be at risk.
What was the old saying that you told me? If it can fit in something's mouth, it will actually go into its mouth.
Yep.